Hello everyone, I'm K. Sangeeta, 4th year student. In this video, I'm going to explain in detail about milk fever. It's an important metabolic disease of dairy cows occurring very close to calving. Here is a case history of a cow which calved 2 days back, and in the picture you can see that the animal is in sternal recumbency and the head of the animal is turned towards the flank. Adalexia and scanty feces were noticed. Any guess about the case? Yes, it's hypocalcemia or milk fever. It's very easy to diagnose the case with these common clinical signs. The animal may be either in the sternal or lateral recumbency, head tucked on the flank, which is an important and typical sign in milk fever, relaxed anal sphincter, mydriasis, muscle fasciculations, that is, shivering of thigh, less audible heartbeat, adalexia, and heart rate 120 per minute, which is very well appreciated in the third stage of milk fever. The basic biochemical change is the deficiency of ionized calcium in the system. The normal concentration of calcium is 9 to 12 mg per deciliter and the daily requirement is less than 20 gram per day. So, it is easy for a cow to maintain the normal calcium levels during the non-lactation period. But the loss of plasma calcium during the lactation is 50 gram per day. So, a cow loses 2 gram of calcium in 1 kg of milk and 2.3 gram of calcium in 1 kg of cholesterol. So if a cow produces 10 kg milk, it will drains out entire calcium in the extracellular fluid. So most of the cow will adopt within 48 hours by the intestinal absorption of calcium and increase in the parathyroid hormone level in the plasma. Coming into the incidence, it is rare in first or second calving and high producing multiparous dairy cows are at risk. And it is very common during 48 to 72 hours after calving. However, the danger period is 10 days. It is common in 3rd to 7th parturition because older cows are commonly affected as it contains only low number of osteoblasts and low level of tissues containing 1,25 dihydroxycholecalciferol. So it takes long time to adapt to the intestinal calcium absorption mechanisms to meet out the calcium demand. It is rare in heifers because they are able to adapt more effectively to the increasing calcium demand at the onset of lactation. With the increasing age, this adaptation is hampered and it results in moderate to severe hypercalcemia in older cows. So, the adaptation mechanism is directly related to the efficiency of intestinal calcium absorption, which decreases with increasing age. It may either occur before parturition or around the time of parturition or after parturition. And we all know that this estrus will suppress the appetence and inappetence for about 48 hours. This will automatically suppress the serum calcium levels. In sheep, sudden withdrawal of feed and forced exercise will predispose the animal to milk fever. Understanding the calcium homeostasis is very important to know about the pathogenesis of the disease. So, whenever the calcium level in the blood is lower, the parathyroid hormone gets stimulated and it releases PTH. This acts on the kidney and activates the enzyme 1 alpha hydroxylase. This enzyme converts the vitamin D into its active form, that is 1,25 dihydroxycholecalciferol. This active form of vitamin reaches the intestine and increases the calcium absorption. And on the bone, this PTH causes the release of calcium. So they contribute to the increase in the calcium level in blood. On the other side, when the calcium level is raised, thyroid gland releases calcitonin. This calcitonin is a calcium lowering hormone and it is quite opposite to PTH. This acts on the bone and causes the calcium deposition, and it acts on the kidney and reduces the calcium uptake. And now the calcium level in the blood will be lowered. This is how the calcium homeostasis is maintained. This picture indicates the various routes of calcium loss in a cow. There are three factors affecting the homeostasis. They are impaired calcium absorption from the intestines, and when the loss of calcium through colostrum is greater than the absorption from intestines and mobilization of calcium from the bones, it results in hypocalcemia and insufficient or slow mobilization of calcium from bones. Here, there are some dietary risk factors which predispose the animal to milk fever. Let's see it one by one. First is dietary feeding of potassium. So potassium rich plants like grasses and legumes. So we know that the potassium is a cation. This alkalinizes the cow and causes metabolic alkalosis and hampers the bone resorption and increases the incidence of milk fever. Next is the deficiency of dietary magnesium. So magnesium is very essential for the release of parathyroid hormone. So deficiency of magnesium will impair the PTH release from parathyroid gland. Feeding of excess phosphorus greater than 80 grams per day, this will inhibit the renal enzyme 1-alpha hydroxylase, which converts the vitamin D into its active form 1,25 dihydroxycholecalciferol, and this is very important for calcium absorption from the intestines. And feeding excess calcium more than 100 grams per day during the dry period or prepartum period, this will increase the secretion of calcitonin hormone, which might result in the inability of the parathyroid hormone to mobilize the calcium rapidly from the bone to maintain the calcium levels during the critical period nearing the parturition. So, immediately after the parturition, the target cells in the bone becomes temporarily refractive or insensitive to the elevated levels of PTH, and it ultimately results in hypocalcemia. The next factor is DCAD, that is dietary calcium anion difference. That is, DCAD is nothing but cations minus anions. Diets rich in cations induce milk fever by metabolic alkalosis, and diets rich in anion, that is sulfur and chloride, this will decrease the incidence by metabolic acidosis. And DCAD should be low in peripartum period. So high cation and low anion diet predisposes the cow to milk fever. There are certain other factors which also cause milk fever, that is oral dose of zinc oxide, which is used in the treatment of facial eczema in sheep, will drop the serum calcium levels. Next, aminoglycosides like gentamicin, streptomycin, when given in the IV route, this will decrease the degree of calcium ionization. And oxalate-rich plants, this oxalate will bind with the calcium and make the calcium unavailable for use. And here, it's very important to know about the function of calcium, because this deficiency of the calcium are responsible for the clinical signs produced. Calcium is responsible for maintaining the cell membrane stability. So in the deficiency, the cell membrane permeability gets increased and it alters the resting membrane potential. So the nerves got excited, and this nervous excitation of the animal will be noticed in the first stage of milk fever. Next, muscle contractibility. There is no actin-myosin complex formation in the deficiency of calcium, and this is responsible for the relaxed anal sphincter, ruminal stasis. So it causes secondary bloat and recurrency. The third one is, it is very essential for the neurotransmitter release. So according to the clinical signs produced by the animal, milk fever is classified into three stages. In stage 1, it will occur for only less than an hour, so owner may fail to notice the signs. The signs showed by the animal are excitation, nervousness, tetany with hypersensitivity, agalexia, mildly ataxic, able to stand, fine tremors over the flanks and biceps, head bobbing, restless, and scant feces. And in stage 2, it lasts for 1 to 12 hours. The typical sign is the head of the animal will turn towards the flank, and animal is unable to stand, so it is in sternal recumbency and a subnormal body temperature. This causes cold extremities, relaxed anal sphincter, so scanty feces, and a secondary bloat, which is mainly due to the rumen stasis, mydriasis, constipation. Pupillary right reflex is either incomplete or absent, anorectic, dry muscle, and a decreased intensity of heart sounds. And in stage 3, the animal is unable to maintain a sternal recumbency, so it goes to lateral recumbency and cause severe bloat. Here the animal is almost in the comatose stage. Heart rate is 120 per minute and undetectable peripheral pulse. And here in this stage, the animals survive only for few hours and death is mainly due to shock. So, proper and correct diagnosis is important for providing the correct treatment and also to save the animal. We can diagnose based on the clinical signs which we see in the previous slides, and based on the laboratory diagnosis collect the blood from the animal and detect the calcium levels. In a normal animal, the calcium level will be 9 to 12 milligram per deciliter, and in subclinical cases it will be less than 7.5 milligram per deciliter, and in clinical, that is recombinant animal, it will be 2.5 milligram per deciliter. When the calcium level goes below 2.5 milligram per deciliter, death occurs. And prolonged recumbency in milk fever causes the ischemic muscle necrosis, so which will elevate the levels of creatine kinase and AST in ruminants. Then calving history is very important because this metabolic disease occur around the time of calving. And next, clinical pathology. This table indicates the blood serum calcium, phosphorus and magnesium levels during various stages of milk fever. The standard treatment is giving calcium borogluconate slow IV at the dose rate of 2.2 gram per 100 kg body weight, and this calcium will return in the system for 6 to 8 hours. So 500 ml of 23% calcium borogluconate will give 10.7 gram calcium, and only plain calcium should be used in subcutaneous site. 50 to 125 ml per site can be given. In case of IV, it should take we should take 15 minutes to administer the standard dose. If arrhythmia is detected due to induced hypercalcemia, that is due to the overdose, there is no need to panic, just give a dose of atropine. There are some points to be considered in the treatment, that is always have atropine with you while treating the hypercalcemia or milk fever cases. If any arrhythmia is detected, use a dose of atropine. And in hot and humid climates, in order to avoid the complications of heat stroke, the temperature of the animal should be brought down below 39.5 degrees Celsius. And next, subcutaneous route is preferred after IV because the peripheral circulation may be impaired in milk fever. And we have to monitor the heart rate frequently during the treatment. If there is sudden increase in the heart rate, stop the calcium injection. How do I know that the animal is responding to the treatment? Here are some typical responses to the treatment shown by the animal affected with milk fever. Muscle tremors, belching, there will be slow improvement in the amplitude and pressure of pulse, decrease of the heart rate, and increase in the intensity of the heart sounds, sweating of muscle, defecation. Usually 75% of uncomplicated cases will respond to calcium borogluconate. And here are some unfavorable responses to IV calcium. This is mainly due to improper and incorrect diagnosis of the case. There will be increase in heart rate in the cows which are affected with toxemia and bradyarrhythmia due to calcium overdosage. And the animals will have increased sensitivity to calcium which are affected with coliform mastitis, toxic metritis, severe ketosis, hepatic lipidosis and hypokalemic animals. So correct diagnosis is very important. This oral calcium should administered only in animals with swallowing ability in order to avoid the complications of aspiration pneumonia. Calcium chloride at the dose rate of 50 gram per oz and calcium propionate at the dose rate of 125 gram per oz can be used. So these two are very useful for the cows which are at the risk of both ketosis and milk fever. Oral preparations of calcium carbonate, calcium hydroxide, and calcium oxide should not be used because they are ineffective. We all know that the prevention is better than cure. So, how to prevent this milk fever? We have to reduce the dietary calcium, that is excess feeding of calcium during the dry period. We have to replace the alfalfa and legumes with hay, as alfalfa and legumes are rich in calcium. An induction of mild to moderate metabolic acidosis during the last few weeks of gestation, and partial milking. Care should be taken to avoid the mastitis and partial milking. So after coving, at the time of parturition, we can administer oral calcium and avoid complete milking for few days. So before cowing, the transition period is very important. So it is nothing but a change from a dry cow to the lactating cow. During the dry period, the cow may be fed with high fiber and low energy diet, and in the lactating period, it may be fed with low fiber and high energy diet. Avoid excess calcium and phosphorus during the late gestation. And we can administer a dose of vitamin A D3, and this vitamin D3, which is the active form, it enhances the intestinal calcium absorption. And dietary calcium anion difference, which is nothing but cations minus anions. We should achieve minus 10 to minus 15 milliequivalents per 100 gram of dry matter, which is very ideal. And during the lactating period, there will be positive DCAD, which is very optimum to improve dry matter intake. And in dry period, negative DCAD, that is minus 8 to minus 12 milligram per 100 gram of dry matter, is desirable for 3 weeks prepartum. Helps to increase the blood calcium level. We can also use calcium binders like zeolite A, which is sodium aluminum silicate, 700 gram per oz, 2 weeks prior to cowing. And this is a table about anionic and cationic salts. These anionic salts will acidify and cause metabolic acidosis and increases the calcium absorption and prevents the milk fever. And cationic salt will cause metabolic alkalosis and decrease the calcium absorption, and this will predispose the animal to milk fever. So how to achieve acidification? In order to achieve acidification, we can use either of this one, ammonium chloride or magnesium sulfate. This magnesium sulfate is most palatable and calcium chloride is least palatable. This acidification occurs after 36 hours of administration. If the urinary pH is acidic, it indicates acidification. So in this table, the acidic pH 5.5 to 6.5 indicates that the dry cow is in mild metabolic acidosis. As the dry cow is in mild metabolic acidosis, the lactating cow will have the normal calcium level. So a negative DCAD is essential during the dry cow period. This milk fever is called as gateway disease because it acts as a pathway for many diseases like dystocia, that is uterine inertia, which is mainly due to the deficiency of calcium, and retained fetal membrane, metritis, abomasal displacement, mastitis, uterine prolapse, and ketosis. So it causes huge economic loss to the owners. As the diagnosis of milk fever is based on the paresis and the loss of consciousness following the parturition, it is very important to differentiate from other diseases occurring at the time of parturition. Other metabolic diseases like hypomagnesemia. In this condition, there will be tetany, tachycardia, and hyperesthesia. In hypophosphatemia, the animal will urinate a coffee colored urine. And in severe hypokalemia, the clinical signs of this condition will be similar to botulism. That is, there will be flaccidity of tongue and the masticatory muscles, but the head will be lying on the ground rather than on the flank. And ketosis. Although the animal affected with ketosis respond to calcium treatment, it will still show the signs of ketosis like licking, circling, etc. And degenerative myopathy, which is mainly due to prolonged recumbency. And diseases associated with toxemia and shock: acute or peracute coliform mastitis, aspiration pneumonia, which is mainly due to oral drenching, and acute diffuse peritonitis. This is due to abomasal perforation or uterine rupture, and it can be diagnosed by splashing sound on ballotment of abdomen. And carbohydrate encroachment: in severe ruminal lactic acidosis, the animal may go to recurrency. So it is essential to differentiate it from milk fever. It is not advisable to use the stomach tube to collect the rumen liquid when the animal is in lateral recurrency. So lift the animal using the lifters and collect the rumen fluid, examine the rumen pH and look for living protozoa. If there is no living protozoa and the rumen pH is acidic, it indicates acidosis. And in toxic septic metritis, there will be a foul smelling uterine discharge. Injuries to the pelvis and pelvic limb: maternal obstetric paralysis is common in heifers, and dislocation of coxofemoral articulation. In this condition, the animal will be mentally alert, and we can easily diagnose when we manually abduct the limb beyond its normal range. In sheep, it is important to differentiate it from pregnancy toxemia. In this condition, there will be CNS involvement. I use these two books for reference: Veterinary Medicine by Peter Constable and the Merck's Veterinary Manual.